Okay, we'll get started now. Hello, everyone. My name is Raven Manygoats, and I'm a curatorial assistant in the Art of the Americas and worked closely with John Quick Smith on Indigenous Identities Here, Now, and Always, which is now on view at the Zimmerli Art Museum through December. I'm also a PhD candidate in the history department here at Rutgers, and my research focuses on the role of women in the Red Power movement. Before beginning, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I stand on right now is part of the ancestral lands of the Lenape people, who were forcibly removed and now live throughout the United States and Canada in diaspora, including the 3 federally recognized nations in Oklahoma and Wisconsin. They are the Delaware Tribe of Indians, Delaware Nation, and the Stockbridge-Munsee community. We acknowledge that Rutgers University, like New Jersey and the United States as a nation, was founded upon the exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. While we should acknowledge the Lenape's experiences of historical and contemporary disenfranchisement, we should also recognize and celebrate their perseverance and survival. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening, and thank you especially to Cara Romero for joining us for our virtual Artist Talk series in support of the ongoing exhibition, Indigenous Identities Here, Now, and Always. The Zimmerli's operations, exhibitions, and programs are funded in part by Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and the income from the Avenir Endowment Fund and the Andrew W. Mellon Endowment Fund, among others. Additional support comes from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and the donors, members, and friends of the museum. So Indigenous Identities was curated by the late and great John Quick Smith, and marks her largest curatorial endeavor with over 100 artworks across a range of media, from beadwork and jewelry to video and painting. The exhibition foregrounds the significance of identity in art making through the diverse practices of 97 artists representing more than 50 distinct Indigenous nations from across North America. We are thrilled to have Cara join us this evening and to have her work in the exhibition. Her photographs, Arla Lucia and Starlight, Starbright, are on view in our main exhibition space. And after Cara's discussion of her art practice, we will open up to questions from the audience, so feel free to put them in the Q&A function. And just a little bio for Cara. So growing up in contrasting settings of rural reservation and urban sprawl, Cara Romero now possesses a bicultural Indigenous identity. She pursued an undergraduate degree in cultural anthropology at the University of Houston, but became disillusioned by the way Native Americans are portrayed in academia and media. Realizing photography could do more than anthropology did in words, she trained in photojournalism, editorial portraiture, and film, digital, commercial, and fine art photography. Romero travels between Santa Fe and the Chemehuevi Valley Indian Reservation, where she maintains close ties to her tribal community and ancestral homelands. And she also has a solo exhibition on view at the Hood Museum at Dartmouth, which I've heard wonderful things about. So congratulations on that, Cara.
Thank you.
And I will turn it over to you now.
Great. Thank you, Raven. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you for your attendance, everybody that's out there virtually. I'm calling in from Santa Fe, New Mexico, the home of the Tewa, Tiwa, Towa speaking, Cara speaking peoples. And so I've lived here off and on since about 1999. I moved here to come to the Institute of American Indian Arts and studied in fine art film photography there at the Institute when it was still just a 2-year university, and ended up at Oklahoma State with furthering that study in photography. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the legacy of Jean Quick Smith. She was also here in the Santa Fe area with her family, and she was very supportive of many young, emerging, and when you go from emerging to mid-career and established, she was there, and we were all cheering her on as her art career soared into the stratosphere with major solo shows and representation in New York galleries. She maintained her humble, sweet nature, and would purchase artwork. And so the two pieces that are on view at the Zimmerli are from Jean Quick to See Smith's personal collection, and those are Starlight, Starbright, and Arla Lucia. And I always felt that she had a kindred spirit or maybe a shared sense of humor with me. And so I'm touched that those pieces made it into the show. I'm going to share my screen and go through um, a portfolio with all of you and talk a little bit about biography. And for those of you that may already know my biography, hopefully I'll share something that you haven't heard before. And feel free to ask me any questions during the Q&A. As Raven mentioned, I was born to interracial parents in the Los Angeles area in 1977. They were high school sweethearts. My dad was Chemehuevi and my mom Anglo. They were high school sweethearts at Hawthorne High. And just about the time they got married, our tribe had reorganized and created through the Indian Reorganization Act, the Chemehuevi Valley Indian Reservation. And so people came disenrolled from other reservations and came in from the cities to reorganize in the heart of the Mojave Desert. Our reservation is on the California side of the Colorado River. The traditional ancestral territory is vast. It ranges from Las Vegas, Nevada, out west to Barstow, Victorville, Kern County, and then all the way down south to Parker, Arizona. And we were the folks that were able to traverse the desert. We knew where all of the watering holes are and were, and how to safely navigate the desert. So we were known for trading things from the coast all the way to the tribes in the Southwest. Chemehuevi Valley is really just home for me, and it's a a very unique, biodiverse ecosystem. We really grew up uh, in relationship with the land as Chemehuevi people, and played outside all day long. We were able to identify flora and fauna at a really young age, really dependent on the watershed and the water system out there at Chemehuevi. And I think all of that really informs my work. I was lucky enough to grow up in basket weaving culture. And so while the art continues to go more and more dormant every year, we still have weavers among us, and we gather in the very early spring and in September or October for the white river willow, and still share sources of devil's claw with each other. And so most of the time when you reference Chemehuevi artists, you will see the greatest of the Great Basin basket weavers. Our family relocated to the reservation in 1979, and my grandmother was a chairwoman of our tribe. This is a picture of her on the right, and my Aunt Lillian were really like mothers to me. And this idea of, having a really, I think, astute understanding of this lived reservation life and experience, and then this really stark contrast for representation and misrepresentation in dominant society. I think for so many of us hits home really, really early, whether we're perusing magazines or books in academia or history books. It seems like there's just too little, or it's off the mark. And so I was always a lover of photography. I pored over the family photos that we had, whether they were in scrapbooks or shoeboxes, and was able to tie all of the people to different family trees and understand our lineage from a really early age. I was just fascinated with the photos that would emerge from our community. And as far back as I can remember, I um, played in the arts. It was what I wanted to do from a very, very young age. I drew all day long. It was really a best friend. I poured through Life magazine was really influential for me at a young age. And then, of course, through these, hand-colored family photos, pictures of my grandmother and her brother, pictures of, really this like cultural abundance that we had in our communities, and really, fell in love with these fantastic photos that were in our community, but seemingly nowhere else. And I stumbled into a black and white film class in 1997 with a borrowed camera and fell in love with this idea of capturing our sense of humor, who we are in contemporary times. And I really, when I started out in black and white film, thought it would be much more along the lines of photojournalism and photo documentary. And it would be, 6 more years of study in photography that would really take me, um, towards the use of color, of lights, of photo illustration, of digital work. And I think, I really found my voice uh, through a lot of examination of my own autobiography, as well as an examination of our photographic history, both from within culture, and then, of course, the plethora of photography that was made of Native Americans from outside of culture. And I think I really grappled with um, both of those things, or all of those things, as I learned to indigenize the medium, and take the weaponization of the medium away from the process and the practice, and really find stories that were what I feel like are in service to community, that show our beauty and our diversity and our modernity and our resilience, and just all of the things that I find to be more true reflections, and being able to tell those from within culture, both within my community and intertribally, has brought just so much joy to my life. This idea of Americana pop culture and our indigeneity, I'll walk us through some different categories of the work. I don't really make the work in the sense of I'm going to work on this specific uh, thematic for a long period of time. It's much more spontaneous with the people that are around me. And so the categorization is really like in hindsight, these are the themes that pop up as I work on different projects wherever, my heart and my life and my surroundings are. This piece, Starlight, Starbright, was a more recent piece. I think it was made in 2023, during a time that I think I was really just ready to play. And I had kind of bared witness to this renaissance of roller skating culture that was happening with the younger generation. And I grew up roller skating, participating in figure skating and in roller derby. This was, of course, in the 80s. So it was such a joy to see the resurgence of the culture, and had a keen understanding that there were a lot of people in community that were also lovers of the sport. And I think sometimes when I find those spaces where our indigeneity is like very present, but very absent from representation in pop or sub-pop culture, it's one of those things that I like to really push forward as a possibility, right? And it kind of, widens people's understanding of, what a Native American photograph could be, or what Native American girls in play can look like. And this was a super playful. I think all of the individual details of the contemporary ways that we dress and show that we're Native are evident throughout the piece, but also just a lot of sense of humor of kind of like that tough tomboy culture of intertribal Native women. This piece, Coyote Tales #1, again was an examination of how our mythos and our indigeneity come through time and pop up in kind of this non-linear way. So I think, with photography being a capture of time and of light in essence, we can really begin to bend time, and we can really emphasize through kind of a supernatural approach, or through maybe we would call it a surreal approach, this indigenous worldview that, many things can be true at once, right? And so we can be contemporary Native people and bring really, really old things through time with us. And so I think a lot of these pieces are really speaking to um, the idea of, collision of paradigms, right? And ways that we live with an understanding that there's a little supernatural in everyday life and, through our storytelling. And this one, TV Indians, has again this juxtaposition of contemporary Native peoples as they are, their intertribal Puebloan friends and family, and then on this um, landscape of new ruins of these box TV sets. We create this shape of new ruins in the landscape, and then on all of the different TVs are ways that we've been portrayed in the media, going back to, I think, all the way to the 40s, with Tonto and Lone Ranger. But there's smoke signals and dances with wolves and Braveheart and Iron Eyes Cody and Billy Jack and the occupation of Alcatraz. And we had a ball picking out the images that would be on the different TVs. It's nuanced, they're somewhat beloved, and they're problematic simultaneously. And, all of these can lead to different discussions, but maybe that's because that's all we had, so they became part of our sense of humor of what we internalize as far as, understandings of imagery of self. And then, of course, the proud people in front, really asserting a completely different reality. And so it kind of, I hope, lends itself to like the absurdity that, many natives face when it comes to, ways of life, and then, contrasted with representation. This piece was done in 2013, and this is Last Indian Market. And it was one of my favorite pieces in the journey of becoming a photographer, because it was the first one with, I think, such sense of humor, and really combining everything that I had learned to make in photography. The lighting, the photo illustration, stitching several photographs together, the friendships, the uh, indigenizing, and blending indigeneity with 21st century ideas. And I worked collaboratively with Marcus Ammerman on this piece. He's the performance artist that plays Buffalo Man. And I think it was the response within community that for me was so important, that it really helped me understand a lot about how to be in service to community, and how feedback from Native audience is perhaps the most important when we're held to really strict cultural protocols, and we want to make work that honors and respects and represents many Native people, but also wanting to be very careful with that responsibility. For this one, it was coming from a place where leading up to it, uh, having this understanding maybe of what Native photography has been what outside culture thinks is interesting about Native culture. And I can think to certainly turn of the century ethnographic photos, but often figurative landscapes in regalia, devoid of modern context, kind of perpetuating like this historic and bygone way of being. And here we have this image that very quickly is, it's in color, it's highly produced, it's um, self-directed, it's funny, and it's also quickly letting the viewer know that as contemporary Native people, we're very astute in Western art and biblical stories. We watch Jeopardy, right? Like, the train of thought that you can go through and very quickly understand that we're contemporary peoples is, I think, the aha moment for me in this particular piece. Decolonizing self-image through matriarchy and transforming power. I think there's a really subtle but really powerful shift. Being a Native woman photographer, when I started out, of course, it was dominated by, a white male gaze. And that's just because that was, most of the media makers with this particular form of art when I started out. And I'm happy to say that the landscape has changed a lot, and there are a lot more up and coming women photographers. And to my delight, a lot more up and coming Native photographers. And I just think that that's so important when Native people are telling their own story, because there's such a wealth of content and so many stories that haven't been told through so many different perspectives and intertribally. I think as artists, we're all starting from a place of autobiography. We have to, as they say, write what we know. We have to make what we know. I think that that's certainly true for me. I don't have, I think, very many self-portraits, although I am in the Starlight, Starbright, if that wasn't obvious. I don't think I mentioned that, but I am actually, I think that's the only photograph out of all of them that I'm in. And this idea of transforming power is connected to being a Native woman behind the lens. And I think that that kind of intrinsically lends itself to countering subjectivity of Native women, of fetishization, things that become really problematic when you get out there and you see artwork of Native women that is disempowering, that does the opposite, or that's lost in time and reinforces ideas that maybe we're not real or that we don't exist. And so I think by using the medium towards ideas of our shared humanity, of the power of Native women, of how we feel and see ourselves, both within community and within ourselves, is maybe only something that other Native women can do and evoke so well. And so it's an area of mine that I love to work in. This is a piece called Arla Lucia, and I really wanted to do an indigenized Wonder Woman. I grew up with Wonder Woman. I just find her such a powerful like earth goddess motif, but also this inherent strength. I think she was the only person that I could identify with as a young person on TV that really kind of matched how Native women are held in community, that we are powerful, that we are strong, that we carry our community, that we're often the backbones, that we're often in leadership roles. And um, I think this piece is kind of like the hero that I needed to see at the time. Arla Lucia is another artist that I met at the Indigenous Fine Art Market around 2015, 2016. And she is a power lifter and stands, I think 6'1", 6 feet 1 inch tall. And so when I thought to myself, who is this, indigenized Wonder Woman, I called Arla to see if we could custom make her costume. And that's how we ended up with this piece, Arla Lucia. This piece is Ka. It was in the Hearts of Our People show. Ka is a ceramic artist, and I wanted to work alongside this idea that we bring our stories and our mythos and our, uh, deities of the clay, medicine that we have through time. And it appears, in people's different identities. And Ka has this gift of clay art that's been passed down through thousands of years through her, ancestral Puebloan peoples, and she still practices today. And so this is two images, one of Ka and a second one of a Mesa Verde vessel that is um, overlaid onto her skin. She's painted in clay, and then the overlay is done almost as a double negative. This one is Nikki. She is half Dene, half Anglo, and here she's in a life-giving pose. But I was really interested in both the figurative nature of the piece and the repeated designs on the antique Navajo blanket. It was very connected to earth colors and to life-giving and things that I found to be strong medicine within our culture. The next series are First American dolls. We created the life-size doll boxes for each of these young people to fashion intergenerationally. They became family projects where we worked on what cultural accoutrement and what the design of the doll box would be. And these were really countering available dolls. We were raising our daughter at the time and countering the paucity of available representation for Native American dolls, and also countering this idea of pan-Indianism, that we're all alike. And so I think the series is up to 9 now, but you can see the incredible diversity of the different tribes and tribal vernacular. Um, I'm from California, and so, California storytelling is part of my autobiography, and I sense that our stories are lesser known in the broader dialogue, and so I like to, um, bring those stories forward. And this piece is called Oil and Gold. It speaks to the loss of land along the coast and what we call the 18 unratified tribes along the coast that were not only removed but never federally recognized because their areas were rich in oil and gold. And so this story, this age-old story of resource extraction, never seems to end when it comes to tribal lands. And this idea of removal, declaration of eminent domain, these are stories that happen over and over, for the last 500 years. But the people that are along the coast of California are often it's a great misunderstanding about why they have no lands and why they're unfederally recognized. But to talk story in the area, there's really still Tongva people, Ahashman people, Shumash people, um, all along the coast, Ohlone people that were removed and still exist, despite not being federally recognized. And it really ties back to an ugly part of American history. And so I like to tell those stories because I feel like without the stories, we have less understanding for why Native people are, surviving under the circumstances that they're surviving under in contemporary times. Um, this piece was done during the pandemic. I had the opportunity to work in California on the pieces that we just saw before. But because we were isolated, I also had the opportunity to work very closely with my daughter. And so we did a month-long study where we went out to the shoreline every day for weeks and we photographed. We photographed balancing our lights into the sunset. We worked with different types of California regalia, of contemporary ballet costumes, and with the regalia of coastal peoples. And so there's an old adage in photography that the harder you work, the luckier you get. And so this piece was just the zen of timing of the lights flashing at the same time the wave popped up and splashed behind her before she had even the opportunity to react. And so when you're looking at the contact sheets after, you've taken, 200 or 300 photos and you see an image like this, it really feels, just otherworldly, like rather unbelievable and really gives kind of goddess vibes. And so I thought really it lends itself to this idea that in California, most of our creation stories are centered around the ocean, even if we're from the desert. And so our particular creation stories are around great ocean women. And I really like, my mind goes straight to that when I see this piece. It's called Hermosa. It's going to be on Joy Harjo's next book cover called Girl Warrior. So spoiler alert, that's the cover. And this piece was done in collaboration and in community on the campus of Dartmouth University and getting ready for the show Panapunuwugai. The Kanaka Maoli students and I had the opportunity to work together on this piece and a couple of the doll boxes. One of them I showed earlier. And these were really self-directed collaborations. So much of the work is extremely collaborative. So it's maybe an idea that I have, wondering if it's resonating with the people that I'm collaborating with, or I know enough about the person to say, why don't we make a photo about this part of your story or this part of our shared story? These pieces were very much self-directed, and so the students knew that I had the ability to do underwater photography and wanted to really show their personal connections as oceanic peoples, as peoples of the water, to do their different hula moves underwater. And so this piece is what you're seeing. More recent work has, fallen into the genre of Indigenous futurism. It's a genre that's emerged really over the last 10, maybe 15 years, alongside other futurism movements, such as, Latin futurism and Afrofuturism and Indigenous futurism and futurity was something that I was watching so closely. They had just started doing museum shows and I was watching the visual conversations with, contemporaries and peers. And it took me a while to think about how do I think about our futurity? And for me, the pieces that began, or the ideas that began to emerge were, um, I think, very playful in this idea of speculative futurism. I found myself kind of falling back on, the quintessential like references from Star Trek, or like the quintessential green girl, just to kind of place us as a in our collective consciousness in the future. But really, each of the pieces has something very, very old. And so the idea was, as we think about where we will be in the future, um, we're going to take the things that we've protected for thousands of years with us as Native people. Sometimes we call them original instructions. Sometimes we have an understanding of what the most important things are, because they're the things that exist within our communities against all odds. So it's the heirloom foods and the pottery making and the basket making and the beadwork designs and family designs that are passed down through, hundreds and thousands of years. And so each of these women have their tribal vernacular of some form, photo illustrated or digitally illustrated onto their skin. And then the wires are representing not them connected to the outside world, but really the need for the outside world to connect to indigenous knowledge, like the need for all people to indigenize and get back to place-based ways, to really think about reciprocity with ecosystems and our different bioregions, and really thinking about Indigenous leadership and Indigenous women's leadership as part of that. And so um, that's, what Three Sisters is about. Three Sisters being a reference to the Indigenous science gardens that are found throughout North America, where the three different foodways are in symbiosis and creating strength. This one is Gikendaso in Ojibwe, meaning she is knowledgeable, or she is educated. And she is Leah Kolakowski. She's from Keweenaw, I think is how you say it, up in Michigan along the lakes. And in her sunglasses, I know it may not render well on your computer screens, but it has an image of her watching her powwow dances in the woodlands. And so while she's appearing in the future, she's brought um, she's able to see them still dancing the dances in her community that they've been dancing for a really long time. I was also able to create a series around my friend and fellow filmmaker Alika. We met in her bachelor's portfolio review at the Institute of American Indian Art, where she was making Afro-Indigenous futurism film. And I asked if she would like to work together on creating a series that spoke to both the fusion of both cultures, really. And so these pieces of Alika reference hip hop culture, they reference traditional Caddo body paint. You see the reference to Tribe Called Quest's Low End Theory album cover, which was just like a very iconic album cover from the 90s. And then you can see also variations where we've made additions to their ghost warrior paint, and then I call them their socks and their gloves in Caddo culture. And again, a series that was self-directed. They were made with neon paint, so we painted and used blacklight in order to make the images, and they sit in a series. And finally, the Zenith. bringing the really old heirloom corn. So we have a fun, very light uh, image, that evokes a lot of hope and joy. And it also is a reminder that maybe the most important things are not how fast our internet is going to be or how fast our transportation is going to be, but we're going to be in real trouble if we're not able to grow our heirloom corn that we've been able to. So it's a recentering on really the ideas that are probably most important for all humans when we're facing things like climate change and foodway disruption. Um, a little behind the scenes video of that work. Um, So we actually tied up all of the corn by fishing lines. So you can see that there's I think that that video and this image really kind of highlights this uh, convergence of the old school film training where there was so much joy, but also so much emphasis and tricks that we used to render things in what we call in camera. And then this idea of the use of photo illustration. I try to balance them very delicately. And so what I've done in this image is taken out the evidence of the fishing line, which is just, stitching very delicately and then adding the star file to the black backdrop. And knowing that that's how I was gonna kind of work with it. But I love it when they have this kind of otherworldly affect where, people are wondering, how did you do that? Or to me, it kind of speaks to the storytelling and the supernatural in everyday life. And that concludes my slideshow. So I'll stop sharing with everybody, and I'm happy to open it up to question and answer for folks. And I hope I didn't miss anything, Raven, if you want me to expand on anything also.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you, Cara. And thank you for sharing all your wonderful work with us.
Of course.
Um, yeah, we'll open it up to the Q&A with the audience. If anyone has questions, go ahead and put it in the Q&A function. Um, but in the meantime, the thing that really strikes me about your photos is that there's so much power and agency just apparent in them. And I love your work, and I wonder if you could talk more about how you collaborate with your models.
Sure. So, I think, it's something that we learn in this medium, and it doesn't always come easy. I think it was, we just lost Sebastião Salgado, and, he said, and it affected me very early on, that a photograph is not taken, it's given. And I really believe that with my whole heart. I think um, learning to collaborate and give agency to community was what I found to be missing from photography of my community. And so when I fell in love with this medium and kind of battled with all of the internal, arguments about um, how is this good and how is this bad, collaboration is and self-direction and agency and consent and all of these different ideas become like really the heart of it. And then the rest kind of follows, like when that's like the most important thing. Um, and so it really starts with, sometimes ideas and then trying to match the person to the idea, like a contemporary issue, and sometimes it's inspired by the person. And I'll talk to whoever the collaborator is. Sometimes I have people that really want to work with me too, and so I'm trying to like figure out an idea to tell their story at this point. Um, it's, a really heartfelt conversation about, how they want to, emerge through the photograph, what kind of story might be interesting, what kind of aesthetic are we going to use? Is the story that we're telling important? Are we authorized to tell it? Because we're all coming from different communities, so that's really important. Especially like when we're working intertribally, we really have to check in with a lot of people, just to, there's some things that we know that are off limits, like that's a no-brainer, but sometimes things are much more nuanced within our community about, what my husband's tribe can tell and what they can't tell, and what we can tell, is different from another tribe. So really trying to, um, like walk the line of strict cultural protocol. um, my sets are really private, and very imaginative. The person is allowed to go through the edits with me and, pick out their favorites. And then before it's ever published, or comes out in any kind of public way, they're able to kind of sign off on it as well. And sometimes these things are, asking uncles, but sometimes they're really intergenerational. I mean, sometimes you got to ask grandma, like, is this okay? Like what we're doing? Um, and I think sometimes like the other side of it is, some of us break taboos, and I think that that's okay also, and I think that is, the dynamics of, individual and collective, and kind of like how that works. So I hope I answered that, but as much agency as I can possibly give, to a person before, their story is out in the world.
Yeah, no, that's great. The amount of care involved, that's really amazing. Um, we do have a question from Brandon. He says, thanks for this amazing talk and tour through your beautiful practice. Could you tell us more about the composition of Starlight, Starbright? How did the image come about? And are there any historical references? By the way, it's one of my favorites in the Zimmerli's exhibition.
Thank you. Um, I'm gonna grab this just because it's right here, and
Uh-huh.
you guys are my captive audience here. But so this is actually my silver medal from like the roller skating championship, like state championship. I don't
Oh,
even
that's
know.
so
It doesn't
cool.
even have a year on it, but my guess would be like 1988 or something like that. And so it really is just an absolute love for roller skating, and, kind of that sense of humor of like maybe that's surprising to people from outside of Native culture, like how many Native women love to roller skate. And it wasn't hard to put out a call, to, just like a group of friends here in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, like who wants to be in a roller skating photo. And there were like 11 girls. They wanted to do makeup, they wanted to do the hair. We wanted it to kind of be a period piece referencing, kind of late 80s styles. And, people are wearing as much indigenized stuff too. So you'll see, earrings and hilarious t-shirts that people are wearing from their tribal communities, like straight out of the res, things like that. And then everybody's just, really their own style. We wanted it to be kind of a fantasy roller derby piece. So I think that it's really important that you like the piece. To me too, I think it really shows Native women in a, a a way that we're very comfortable, but that might be surprising to folks. And so I think it's got like a lot of toughness and a lot of laughter and a lot of playfulness in the piece. As far as historical reference, I think just, doing our best with our imagination to reference kind of the style of the 80s was a lot of fun, especially with the young girls that were probably not born till the 90s that are in the photo. That's Leah and I are the oldest girls in the piece in our late 40s and early 50s. And so we were, kind of able to direct and Pishon Bread is in it. She's a great stylist, and I think, stylists come with that ability to reference different eras and things like that. So I hope that answers the question, but no, it's just very playful and imaginative and down at a roller rink in Albuquerque.
It's a great photo. It's so joyful. I love it. I smile every time I walk by it. We have another question from Claire. Are there any themes or stories that you are excited to explore in your future work?
I am, I think with um, having the major solo show at the Hood, it really felt like 15 years of work that um it was a huge physical, mental, spiritual push to, get it to the finish line. I think the count changes, but I'm pretty sure I printed 67 monumental works for the piece within a year's time. So I do print all of my own work. And um, I have been in front of the computer a lot. And so I'm also a mom, and my kids are getting older. And so there's been this thing that I've been saying for like 18 years, where I'll get back into the dark room when my kids are older, because the sense was when they were young and I was in the thick of it that I couldn't disappear for a couple of days to the dark room. So I'm building a dark room right now, and I've been shooting film, medium format, and 35 millimeter for the last month and a half. And I'm doing some storytelling and some costume making with our kids back home, and we're telling some of our own mythology stories that we can only find in ethnographic books. So we're starting our own book, if you will, and it's a long project. I'm currently seeking grant funds so I can work a little bit slower on the project. And so I've done some prototypes for that, and I hope to start after it cools down in the Mojave. So I finished up, just now at the beginning of June, and then I'll wait till September or October before I send anybody out into the desert for photographs, and I'll probably be working on that for a couple of years.
That's really exciting. That's great.
Exciting.
Could you talk a little bit more about your solo exhibition and how that was putting it together and how long is it up for also?
Sure. So it opened January 19th at the Hood Museum. It was a long discussion in the making. I think it took us 5 to 7 years in order to get it to its opening. Of course, there was the lost pandemic time in the mix there, and really needing to flesh out the body of work, or finish a substantial body of work to fill up the Hood Museum was definitely on my mind. um, I remember when Jamie Powell asked me, just kind of crying, because it's not often that a Native woman artist in her 40s gets asked to do a solo show. And I just wanted to do the very best I possibly could. And so we were able to fill up the museum. We have a catalog, but it's really kind of my first monograph as well, coming out. Hopefully, it's done by August. I leave to go to press tomorrow to match all of the color on the photographs in the book. It comes down from the Hood in August, and then it's going to travel First to the Phoenix Art Museum, which I'm really excited about because that's such a major museum, but it's also the closest to my reservation. So it's about 175 miles from my homelands. And so the sense is my community is really going to be able to come out and see it, which I'm really excited about. So we'll work on site-specific installations for that, which has been a fantastic part. When they first asked me to do installations, I froze and I thought, I don't do that. And then we laughed and I said, actually, I make installations for every single photograph. So I think we could just like pull that diorama installation making into the real world and out of the camera. And so I'll be working on a couple more site-specific installations for the Phoenix Art Museum. And then it's slated to go to Jacksonville Museum of Contemporary Art. I'd have to look at the dates on that. I'm sorry, I think it's June of 2026, but it may be July of 26. And then we have one more spot. It is federally funded, and I'm not allowed to say yet because the contracts, but everybody just hold a kind thought that
Yes.
it doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't go defunded.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's really exciting. That's great. And congratulations.
thank
Such a
you.
big achievement. It's
It's such a
wonderful.
big achievement. Yes.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kara. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
This was wonderful. And thank you everyone for joining this evening. And we'll be holding more virtual artist talks in the fall, but this is our final one for the semester. So thank you all for joining in throughout the semester. And thanks again, Kara. And take care, everyone.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, everybody, for attending.